where the truth gets clear. Every voice matters, every story's heard here. From home to the headline, she's breaking it down. Clarity and courage, that's how justice sounds. Order in her court, no matter the scene. From love and the law to what's on your screen. Family, fun, and the world we chase. Obreziah Bullard, justice in its place. Where we are. Every word, every view. Justice isn't just served. It's tailored for you.
Welcome to another episode of Order in Her Court. I'm your host, Obreziah Bullard. This is where family law meet the realities of clarity, straight talk, and compassion. I am so excited today because we are talking about something near and dear to my heart, and that's fathers. I love my fathers, and we have a special father in the building, Mr. Desmond. How are you?
I am good. I am doing good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining. I greatly appreciate it. I want to jump right in because we have an audience that we have fathers that are listening. We have husbands. We have various people, right? Mm-hmm. And one thing I love about you is your willingness to come on, share your story, and talk about a recent divorce, right?
That's correct.
And I think one of the common misconceptions is that men are not supposed to feel. They're not supposed to have emotions when they're going through divorces or custody battles or legitimations, whatever that thing is. Give me just a little bit of a backstory.
Well, first of all, thank you for, giving us this platform to open ourselves up. A lot of times we're told to, keep ourselves tied up inside and, not to express ourselves. But, I appreciate you with that. So I was married for 18 years together, 20 years on paper, to my wife, who I met when I was younger. Of course, everything was good. We had our issues and problems at the beginning and everything, but over time, things started to grow apart. We ended up having 2 kids. I have a soon-to-be 16-year-old and an 11-year-old who's like a star athlete right now. But it was going through a divorce, which I initiated, my third time initiating. It was difficult. I had to pray about it. I had to ponder about it. And I knew that with this being my last time, that I had to go on and follow through. One thing with getting married so early for me was that I had, I turned from a boy to a man in a marriage.
Right.
And when you're thinking as a boy in the beginning, as the years go by, you're thinking more as a man and you're starting to look at things a whole lot different. Your expectations of who you are different within and to others. So as I grew older, I just saw mentally that the compatibility just wasn't there.
Right.
So when I expressed myself, and one thing about it, a lot of men don't like to talk when it comes to their wives, when it comes to just sharing themselves, because if they feel they say anything, then it's going to either be used back against them or, it's going to be ignored. But me, I was verbal. I was extremely verbal. I said what I felt. Some people say that might be the Scorpio in me or whatever, but I said what was on my mind, but I don't think that it was received the way, she wanted, or the way I wanted it to be received, or the way she wanted it to be received.
Now, having been married so long, you all literally grew together.
Yes.
And grew apart.
Yeah.
Now practicing family law, as I've done for the last 13 years, that's not uncommon.
Right.
I see it a lot where people marry young and then it's no bad blood. There's not, people always assume that when there's a divorce, it's bad acts. That's just a false assumption. Sometimes you genuinely just grow apart.
You do. And I think you do. Your mindsets, both individuals, their mindsets are different. You're maturing. You're looking at whereas the scope was small, now you're looking bigger. And then, of course, when kids come in, then it changes your mindset. Now you got to figure out how to raise your kids. Maybe the way you were raised, you might think worked versus the way I was raised, and maybe the way and vice versa. So, those are things that you have to factor in.
And then I hear a lot of people talk about that as you grow together, one thing that is inevitable, you get older.
Yes.
And you start to realize my end is a lot closer than I thought. And I want to live that latter part of my life a little differently than I lived my former part.
Yeah. My brother used to say this thing. He said, you have more days behind you than you do ahead of you. And I think that is so true. And I think, of course, as we get older, you look like, okay, hey, especially in this climate now, you have people that are clocking out of here.
Yeah.
As young as 30, 35, here it is, I'm 44, and I'm thinking like, okay, will I really make it to see that golden 50? Just, it could be anything that could happen. So
I know as you were getting ready to have that very hard conversation with your then wife, that you had a lot of emotions that were going on.
So it was a series of things that had happened that caused for me to finally just put it out there. One thing was that I started growing apart maybe after my first child. She was born in 2010. I saw where I was doing a lot of things as a father and somewhat acting in a mother's role. And it kind of made me look at things a whole lot different. So over time, I stayed in to just, I went along to get along, basically. And that was one of the things like, okay, hey, just keep going. You don't want to have a child out here, and everything. I mean, that was just stay in it, not realizing that I was unhappy. There were some things that went on with me. I started to drink more. I started to just, I had a lot of things that were going on with me during that time. And the ultimate thing was depression. And I was depressed for the fact that I was not happy. Now, I was happy because I had my daughter. I mean, that's my pride and joy. I love her. That was my first child. But, I wasn't being fulfilled and I just wasn't happy in it. So when it came to the conversation, needless to say, it wasn't a thing of like, okay, well, hey, I want a divorce. Now, be in mind, like I said, I did it twice before, but those came by way of arguments. Those came by way of saying, okay, hey, I want to jump ship and get up out of here.
Right.
But it goes back to that maturity level. At the first sign of trouble, you just can't jump.
Right.
So that's one thing that I had to understand. But
how do you speak to the men? You mentioned acknowledging the fact that you were depressed, you weren't happy. And I feel like as men, so many times those emotions are taught to be just overlooked or not even considered, that men's mental health is just as important as anybody else's.
it is.
And so how do you speak to the male role that has those feelings but have this masculine tendency to say, but I don't want to acknowledge it. I don't want to say it. I don't want to call a spade a spade.
So I think, it goes back historically. It goes back to how the men were back in the day and how strong they were. And they were taught to, those men that were raised by fathers, they were taught to be, hey, you be a man, you do this, you do that. Don't worry about your feelings. Screw your feelings.
Take your feelings out of it.
Take your feelings out of it, which is true. Take your feelings out of it. Do what you need to do. Get it done. You can use that in certain aspects. However, when it comes to somebody that you have to lay next to every night, when it comes to somebody that you have to operate a business with, and when I say operate a business, operate a home, meaning that we got to keep the lights on, we got to keep the water running, we have to keep this thing going, especially when we have kids. A lot of times those things can be overwhelming, but when it comes to your emotion, when it comes to your feeling, you have to get it out. And unfortunately, we have different outlets. Men, they do different outlets. Some guys like to play sports. Some guys like to go out and just frolic. They do anything that they can to try to get it out. That's not the healthiest way.
Right.
Your thing is that you want to have a partner that will, first of all, stop and listen and say, I know you're feeling this way about this, but this is the way I believe about this. You know, we have to, and I used feel for her, believe for him, because the thing about it is that we have to believe that this is green. Like this plant right here, we got to believe this is green. Well, you can say, I feel that it's not green. I feel that it's whatever alternate
yellowish.
color. Right. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
I mean, those are things that we have to, you know, those are things that we really have to do. But when it comes, like I say, you have to have some type of outlet, but it has to be a positive outlet. And you want your outlet to be right next to you.
Could your outlet be a friend, a homeboy?
So it could be. It could be. You can, you know, and guys, we rap and we talk and everything, but my homeboy is not sleeping with me. My homeboy doesn't know what goes on in my house because he's looking at it from his perspective.
Right.
And he's looking at it from the guy's perspective. He's looking at, hey man, you know, so and so, yeah, I feel you, dog. You can't tell me about this crazy woman. Or this woman that I'm sleeping with, or that I'm married to. You can't tell me about it. So that's why, you know, you want your outlet to be your spouse. You want it to be your spouse. You know, in admission to myself, when I learned that my outlet wasn't my spouse, I actually had a friend who was a female who I expressed myself to. And it more so was just an emotional, and I won't say emotional, it was just more so, let me figure out how women think. Let me figure out this. Let me figure out that. She couldn't tell me how to be married because she wasn't married.
But she could tell you about the mindset.
She could tell me about the mindset, right.
Right.
And I think that was one thing that, you know, that somewhat served as a finalization to my marriage. You know, but these were things that I had been trying to get you to do for years and years and years. And I was never quiet about it. But now, you know.
When the talker stops speaking.
And that's what ended up happening.
Yeah.
That's what ended up happening. And I used to say all the time, like, okay, hey, you know, you want me to talk. You want me to talk. I said, but when I go quiet, that means that I don't care. And I think that's one thing with women that I would urge them to do. Pay attention to your husband. Pay attention to your spouse. Because when he stops talking, that's when he really is the loudest. But you're not hearing it.
And that's interesting from a man's perspective because women think differently, right? They wrote that book about men from Mars, women from Venus for a reason. And I think from a woman's perspective, we believe men are a lot stronger emotionally, physically, in every aspect that sometimes you overlook that. And you're just like, oh, they're okay. Or they'll be okay. Because as women, we're taught they're the masculine figure. They can hold everything. They can hold more than we can. They're emotionally, they can handle it. You know, they say we're the softies. So even when something is being expressed, you're right. Sometimes women need to take a step back and say, wait, right now is when I need to listen.
There's a book, Obreziah, that I read this book. I want to say it was in the 90s. It was by T.D. Jakes. And he did a sermon over at New Birth at that time. And the book was called He Motions. I'm not sure whether it's still being sold now or whatever, but that book there allowed me to express myself. It showed me how to express myself. It showed me not to bottle things up. I would encourage every woman, if you want to know how we think, read that book. Read what we go through. You know, I know they got to think like a man, this, that. No, I hear you.
Act like a woman, think like a man.
Yeah, or whatever, you know, stuff like that. But it's like, no, Emotions was one of the biggest books that I've read that literally just showed how, like, man, it's okay to feel like this, but you got to know how to express it. And hopefully, you know, you have someone that can receive it. And I would encourage a woman, read it. If you really want to know us, read it.
And I think culturally too, embedding that into our boys.
Yeah.
When they're young, even when they're having these emotions, especially probably around the middle school age, when now they're looking to say, I'm feeling this, whether it's anger or resentment or
Right.
because I hear a lot of people talk about puberty in girls and attitudes and emotions
Right.
and periods and all of those things. How often do you hear people talk about puberty with boys?
They don't acknowledge it.
They don't acknowledge it.
No, not at all.
But they have a cycle too.
They do.
And a lot of times boys aren't taught how to deal with that cycle.
Exactly.
How to express or process their emotions. So I think culturally, if women can educate ourselves better of what that emotion is, and then start teaching our boys and our fathers start teaching our boys of this is valid, you should and you need to express them in a healthy way.
I think, as a product of a single mother, my father was around, and he wasn't. Him and my mother weren't together, but I knew how to access him. I knew how to get in contact with him. One of the biggest things that I suffered with was dealing with the emotions of a woman. There's no way that a woman can teach a man how to be a man.
Now look, I'm going to get some pushback. I know I'm going to get some pushback because, that's a hot topic.
Yes, it is.
But I will say, as a woman, I am a firm believer that a woman cannot teach a man how to be a man. And that's just me being a woman.
Yeah, just as much. I can't teach my daughters how to be a woman. I know what I can teach them, what I expect out of a woman.
And on the flip side, let's be fair. I also believe some men can't teach boys how to be a man. Because you haven't learned how to be a man yet.
So and we can flip it back.
Same thing. Look, I am fair across the board. Same thing with mothers.
Right.
I feel like some women can't teach girls how to be a woman
or mothers
or a wife.
Right.
I am an equal opportunist.
Right.
It's across the board.
Yeah.
Because we haven't taught our generation that's coming up behind us. Well, sometimes, honestly, we haven't been taught ourselves.
That's
my father was a father in the sense of a definition in a word, right? But I have learned as an adult, I can't blame the father. I can't blame him for not being the father I needed him to be because he didn't know how to do it. Because he didn't have the father he needed to be. Right. So it's this generational kind of cycle and curse that goes over and over until somebody says, you know what, I'm going to break it.
And that's exactly right. And I say that too from this standpoint of, so even when I was growing up, like I say, I knew my father was around, but he wasn't around. So I actually started to hang around men of influence. I hung around men who were husbands and who were fathers. One of my biggest mentors, he owns a funeral home, like one of the largest funeral homes here in the metro area. And he took me in under his wing, and he literally somewhat raised me. And I saw the example of how a man is supposed to treat his wife, how a man is supposed to, take care of his children. Now, was he perfect? No, he wasn't perfect. However, that fatherly thing was there. And I wanted to break that curse because I'm like, okay, I didn't have my father, so dare not. I want my children not to have their father, So, but you're right. At some point, you have to have that mindset. Let's break this curse.
Now, at some point in time, you said, I know I have these children. I know I'm not happy. I see so many clients that decide to stay for the kids. How hard was it to make a decision to separate, knowing that it was going to affect your kids in some type of way? Because kids are collateral damage.
They are.
Whether we want to admit it or not, the decisions we make as adults directly affects them on every level, physically, emotionally. It affects them. So how did you process making that decision, knowing what was coming behind it?
Well, I didn't have long to process that decision. I think he gave me. They gave me 15 minutes to get out the house.
Oh no, you have.
I didn't have
24
long
hours.
Yeah, and I knew from that point that, okay, hey, you have to do what you have to do. But you have to do it in order to take care of your peace of mind first. And, you're so wrapped up in what just happened. You're wrapped up in dealing with the emotions of somebody else that literally just altered your life around. And I don't think people understand that. When you get into arguments, when you get into heated discussions, when you get into these things, you have to leave the emotions got to calm down.
Yeah.
Because during that time, that's when we make the worst decisions.
Right.
We create the situation, but we don't like the responses to the situation. Don't create it if you don't want to hit the response, because the response might not be in your favor. So even in that case, I can remember, after everything happened, a friend of mine, real close friend of mine, he said, you need to go talk to an attorney. And I went to an attorney, spoke with her, and she had just a real, hard conversation with me. She was a divorce attorney. Again, third time. And I'm like, how do I do this? What do I do? And she was like, you have to think about your kids. You have to think about, as you said, the collateral damage that's going to be caused with this. And she said, you have to decide what you're going to do. I left her office and I remember going to grab something to eat. And I sat there at that table and literally I cried. Waiter came over and she was like, you okay? I said, yeah. I said, I just got a lot of stuff going on. I said, but I'm fine. She kept coming back over like, I just want to make sure you're good, this, that, or whatever. And I don't know whether she thought I was going to go in there and just go crazy. I was just having, but I was going through my emotions, and I had to decide. And I remember going back to her. I said, here. I told her, she said, okay. I signed everything. She went, filed, and
started the process. I'm a really big advocate of you can't take care of anyone else if you can't take care of you.
There you go. And that was one of the biggest things. One thing that men do suffer with also with that is that we are responsible for taking care of everything around us, but nobody takes care of us. We're taught to, make sure mama is straight on Mother's Day, make sure mama is straight on Valentine's Day, make sure mama is straight on holidays, and make sure mama is taken care of. Let's treat mama like the queen she is, just that. But when it comes to that man, well, he got Father's Day. That's it.
But why is this a real life conversation that I feel like I've had in my own home?
Seriously, but that's the way it is. So it's kind of like, okay.
So is that a consensus that most men feel that way?
Yes.
Because I'm telling you, this is a real life conversation that we debate about.
Yes, it is. It is. I think, we don't require much. We don't ask for much. We want to eat. We want peace. And we want intimate time with our spouse. That's it. We're going to get out there and work. As long as we got peace and we can eat, we're going to have the strength to work. And that strength going to give us time to, to be with our,
significant other.
Yeah, significant other. But we don't require much. They have this thing where, a listing of what all women want and what all men want. And every box is checked on the list for women. And one or two boxes, it's funny.
One thing that I am learning as I get older, and we've been married now, this year will make 16 years.
Oh, wow. Okay, good.
We were a young couple. Got married at 20.
Okay.
Built the family. But as I am getting older and maturing and talking to different married couples, there's one common denominator. And I hear it from everybody, even in my divorces. And that's men are simple.
We are.
And I think as a woman, I think women don't believe it.
They don't, because
but I hear it from every single body. Men are simple. And it's very, very ironic that those three things that you name, peace, make sure I'm good and we're intimate, if you good with that, and help me a little. I do hear that one too. Sometimes I hear men say, I just want a little help.
Yeah.
They don't have to go work 40 hours. I just want a little help.
Yeah.
But I don't think women believe it because it sounds too good to be true.
I mean, it's a complexity is a woman's playground. You know, they want everything scattered about and they want it all confused sometimes. But men, we want it straight.
I think, to be fair, I think we don't want the complexity, but I think the complexity is what we thrive and live in. Because there's an image, and I don't know the name of it, but I can describe it. And it's a woman bent over with 2 small children behind her or beside her, and she has all these things on her back. She has the clothes, she has the books, she has tons of things, right? So I think women operate in complexity in juggling various different balls, because most women, you don't get married because you don't want to you don't not want to make your spouse happy, right? You get married because your goal is, I want to make my significant other happy.
Correct,
They make me happy. But in the midst of juggling all those other things, some of the balls start to fall. And typically the first ball to fall is the ball that you deem to be self-sufficient, that can take care of itself. And that's the spouse.
Right.
It's the most important ball that the women forget, because the children grow up.
Yeah.
They leave the house. But the husband, well, he'll leave too, apparently, if that ball is dropped. So it's the most important ball that I think most women forget and start to neglect. So I think when it comes to the complexity, is women are used to operating in such a complexity that we don't operate as efficient as we probably think that we do.
And I can definitely agree with that. I definitely agree with that. It's so ironic that you say, that the most important ball that they drop is the spouse. I think that because now we live in a society, and we got to look at how this thing has evolved. Marriage has transcended or has changed so much since the days of young. I mean, back in the day when you see married couples, like even my grandparents, they married young, and I mean, they went through their stuff and everything, but they stayed truly to death did them part. But there wasn't a lot of influence. She was a homemaker. He was industrial. He was in the military and everything. It was just that simple. As time has progressed, then, the demand of the woman is becoming more and more and more. The man's role is still the same. He's still going to get out there and do the same work that he's doing. Over time, again, as the woman's role has grown, then demands on the outside, they're seeing now what they can get. And they're trying to juggle more things. And they're saying, okay, I could do it. Just like the woman with the stuff. Oh, I got all this stuff. I got the kids, this, that. But as she's doing all this, then she's seeing on the outside, not on the inside, but on the outside, her worth appears to be growing in the eyes of others. And she's saying, okay, well, shoot, I'm doing this. I'm balling out. I'm about to be a boss chick. I'm about to be this. But while you're steady trying to be a boss chick and you're steady trying to put all this work on the outside, the inside is tearing up.
It's falling apart.
It's falling apart. And it goes back to the thing of when it comes, I trust me, I knock no woman that has a career and that's doing her thing. I mean, women are exceptional. However, they lose focus on the most important thing, especially if they're in a relationship, a marriage, or whatever stuff. They lose focus on the most important thing, which is that man. And when that man feels like he's being forgot about, when that man feels like he is being neglected and everything, then guess what? He's going to start pushing back. So
where do we find a balance? Because I agree with you. There has been a change in society and culture, right? I just like you, I can remember, my grandparents being homemakers, grandfather working. My grandmother passed away not ever learning how to drive in her life. Ever. I mean, that was just a different day and time. Having 7, 8 kids, raising them. But we are now in a society where I hear men say, man, we need 2 incomes. Stuff is expensive. I hear men say, I need some help.
Right.
So from the woman's side, where the woman would stay home back in the day, they didn't have that responsibility of going out and being a part of the workforce. But now you're expected to be part of the workforce in addition to all the other things that women were traditionally expected to do. Right. Help raise the kids, help fix the food, make sure the house clean, all those things. I do believe we are in a day and time that there has to be a balance. That's that communication.
Right. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. So even when I first got married, I told her off the rip, we need to. We got to have 2.
We need to.
We need 2 incomes.
I'm not that person.
Right. So, if you married me for love, then I appreciated that. But if you married me for money, I said, you might want to go somewhere else. But I need you, I think that's one thing. I don't believe in gender roles like that.
I don't either.
I don't, because that's when a lot of the confusion comes in. We are homemakers. We take care of the home. We take care of our children. We fix our food. We clean up our house. We wash our clothes. We do this. Not you wash our clothes. Not you go do this. I mean, there's certain things that, honestly, in my opinion, a woman can get out there and change the oil. My aunt used to change her own oil for her car. I remember she had this little GT, Ford Escort GT or whatever. She would get out there, change her own oil, do things like that because she was just that type of person. But the thing is, we have to look at it when it comes to us trying to build a home. There can't be any separation. We got to do this thing together.
There's no I and team.
There you go.
And I think the sooner or when people will accept the fact that we are not where we used to be. We are in a different state and time mentally, physically, emotionally. Things will change within the household because gender roles, that sounds good. And some people, you know what? Some people, they like it, they love it.
Right.
Some men want a traditional wife. Some women want a traditional man. And there's nothing wrong with that either. But finding that connection where you're on the same page about what you want. It very early on.
You got to talk about it.
You got to.
You got to talk about it.
Even when I was dating my husband at 19, I had an expectation. I don't believe in gender roles. We do things together. Now, with that being said, I can't take out trash. I'm sorry. So in the same breath, I just can't take out trash.
Okay.
Now, my husband will also tell you he didn't marry me for cooking. Y'all don't laugh. Because I can't cook. I cannot cook.
Right.
But I can make sure he's fed.
Right.
And that was fine with him. So those open and honest conversations very early on just to establish expectations.
Yeah.
What do you expect from me as a spouse, as a significant other? What do I expect for you? And whatever that may be, if it's traditional, if it's not, finding that match is, I think, the most important thing.
Yeah. And I think, with that, of course, communication. It has to be communication. It has to be communication. It has to, sometimes you have to put the tough stuff on the table. You have to put the tough stuff on the table, and you have to say, this is what I really expect. This is what I can do. This is what I can't do. How you want to roll with this? Guess what? If I can cook and you can't, well, sweetheart, I'm gonna show you how to cook. Or if when it comes to the trash, I might be out of town, and you might
I do it if I gotta do it.
Right.
That's
but
a force, not by choice.
Right. But certain things, the conversation has to be there, and that's what a lot of couples don't do. They don't put that stuff on the table in the beginning. They have this image of, okay, hey, we get married and we're doing this, and this is how we're going to live. We're going to live that. That's not the case.
And you know what? One thing you learn too is not only putting it on the table in the beginning, but people change.
They do. Yeah.
People grow, and I always hear clients say the person I divorced is not the person I married.
Oh, Lord, have mercy.
And so
Matter of
you
fact,
have
you
to
find the real person. You
when you
find out who
divorce
the
them.
real person is when you divorce them.
And honestly, it's the person you've seen glimpses of,
Yes, but
you didn't acknowledge it.
There you go.
You didn't acknowledge it.
Exactly.
But as you evolve, I never like to hear a person say, oh, they changed on me. Well, they should have.
Mm-hmm.
You should never want to be with someone that remains idle.
Exactly.
Because if I've been married 15 years and he's the same person he was when we were 19 and 21, that's a problem.
That's a real problem.
You should evolve. So you were married for quite some time. First of all, y'all was together for quite some time.
Yes.
When we have the younger listeners that are listening in and they're thinking to themselves, what are those questions I need to be asking my significant other now that you wish back you would have went back and asked yourself? What would those
It's so
be?
funny that you would say that. And this is before marriage. This is with the thought of the dating.
This is where the sweet spot is.
There you go. Okay, so you would have to say where. Don't ask where do you see yourself from now.
Oh, that's a common one though.
This is a common one, but don't ask where do you see yourself 10 to 15 years from now, because a lot of times we set goals and we set expectations that we can't meet, and the other person is actually wanting us to meet those goals and meet those demands. I can't say, okay, 10, 15 years from now, as a young person, I'm going to be a millionaire or I'm going to have this business, that business. Okay, I'm going to hold you to it and you're going to hold me to it. So if I don't meet it, then what's going to happen?
Right.
My thing is that how do you want to grow? How do you want to grow? How are we going to continue to keep watering this plant? This seed that we just created, how are we going to continue to keep watering it? What are we going to do to make sure that we're growing this? That's what needs to be done. Another thing I would tell them before you think about getting into a marriage, go through something extremely hard. My pastor used to say often we introduce people to our representatives and not the actual person.
Oh, wow.
And that's the way a lot of relationships go. You see the guy, he nice looking, the broad shoulders, he looked like a baller, he, this, or you see the girl, she got herself put together, everything. That's how you meet them. But then you get comfortable and you all might be together and the light comes on and that ain't the same girl I met. She looked different.
Makeup come off.
Yeah, or you see him, oh, this joker nasty. Like, he looked like he kept himself so together, but I come to the house, you got toothpaste all over everything. You got clothes all, you got all these things, so, those are things to think about. But when it comes to go through something difficult. I ain't saying just go out there and start something, but go through an extremely difficult situation. How that person responds will let you know if that's the person you want to spend the rest of your life with. Because if they respond in a bad, negative way, go ahead and hit the door.
Immediately.
Get goals quick. Don't go another further.
Don't go another further.
Don't go. You would hope that as you get older, you wouldn't go through any difficult times. However, if you decide to stay, you would hope that their reaction that they had when they were 19 and 20 is different than when they're 40 or, they're 35, 40, or, you know what I mean? So, that's one thing. That's a bit of advice I would definitely give young folks if you're trying to do this.
One of the things that I love to do is listen to people who have gone where either I want to go or I don't want to go. Because you get the best advice, right? If all of the divorces I've done probably thousands over the last 13 years, I always get a nugget from each one. What caused your marriage to break down? And research says, communication and finances, and that if you Google it, you're going to get some answers. But I always have one common denominator amongst all of those. And that's, at the end of the day, one person stopped trying.
Yes.
That's I mean, at the end of the day, you can say finances, you can say lack of communication, but the bottom line is one person stopped trying.
One person stopped trying, yeah. And sometimes, believe it or not, Obreziah, you have people that don't try.
Yeah.
And the person that's trying is just ignoring it with the hopes that one day they will try. That's like fighting for it. You can't have one person fighting for a marriage.
And then the speaker stopped speaking because now I'm tired of trying. That's exactly what happens. I was speaking to an older couple, been married a long time, and I said, what's your secret? I love asking people, what's your secret? And the husband said, we never fell out of love at the same time. And I sat back, and that resonated with me because he said at the same time. So one, he acknowledged the fact that they fall out of love.
Right.
I feel like
that's common.
People expect you to be happy-go-lucky and be in love all day, 24/7. No, you fall in, you fall out. It's called a fall. But he said they never fell out at the same time.
And that's wise. And I think, I mean, and I'll say it, and I'm pretty sure you can attest to it. Some days you go in there and look at your husband and be like, this joker make me sick. And I'm just that. But then just as quick as he make you sick, that lasts for a minute. But then you realize how much he loves you. That lasts for a long time. But so many people, they'll get harked on that minute. That minute is dangerous.
And then they clutch down like a pit bull.
Yes.
The jaws lock.
Yes.
And once those jaws lock,
it's hard to get. Yeah.
That's why we're gonna have you back on another episode because we got to talk about your circle. That's important too.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Because who you're talking to and what you're receiving back can make or break a relationship.
You're absolutely right.
It can make or break a relationship.
Yeah.
We started our show today talking about the divorce, but end up giving relationship advice.
Exactly. We ain't talked about nothing you sent me on the sheet. I'm like, okay, so we still got some more stuff we need to go, but
we gotta have a part 2.
Yes.
And possibly a part 3.
That's right. And I'm whenever I'm available. I'll be free after March 2nd to your availability.
I'm a real big advocate for each one teach one.
Yes.
Right? If we have these conversations openly, honestly, and we're just talking about how we can make our marriages, our culture, how we can teach our younger ones better.
We got to, yeah.
Then we'll get there.
Yeah, I believe that. I definitely believe that. We gotta show our kids what it's like to love. We have to keep the generational name going. There's a lot of names that's falling off. There's a lot of names that's falling off because they're not willing to put in that work. They're not willing to put in that effort to keep going. But yeah, that's something that we have to do. So.
Well, I appreciate you on joining today's episode. It has been amazing. Yeah. We're going to have Mr. Desmond back. This will not be the last time you hear from him, so stay tuned. Thank you so much for joining us. Anything else you would like to say to our audience today? No, this is a good platform. Again, I do appreciate you for just opening it up. And I'm going to hold you to having those conversations because we do need to talk about how we really feel after, these hard times from our perspective. And, maybe I'm saying something that a man has been struggling to say. But absolutely. Absolutely. I'm excited about it. Yes. Perfect. Well, this has been another episode of Order in Her Court. If you would, follow us, like us, and subscribe. Thank you to our sponsors, the Law Office of Obreziah Bullard.